Hello, my name is Daniel. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy real, heartbreaking cheating stories from Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me. This is a story that's been haunting me ever since I read it, because it comes from the voice of a boy whose heart was quietly shattered 6 years ago, and he's been carrying the pieces with him ever since. It comes from 17-year-old Caleb, who lives in a small town outside of Asheville, North Carolina. His mother, Evelyn, is now 39. Caleb still remembers everything about the day his life was split in two. He was only 11 when Evelyn left their family. Not in the way people sometimes drift apart, but in the way that leaves scars. Evelyn had an affair, and one day, just like that, she moved out to start a new life with someone else. Caleb stayed with his dad, Russell, and tried to keep it together even when it felt like nothing made sense anymore. At first, Caleb visited his mom regularly. She always seemed happy to see him, smiling brightly in her new house with her new husband and their 2 daughters. But over time, Caleb stopped going. He couldn't bear the feeling of being an outsider, watching them act like they were one big happy family without him. He didn't hate his mom, he just hated what she'd chosen. So most of the time, they didn't see each other, maybe once or twice a year for birthdays or school ceremonies. Evelyn would try to reach out, try to be close, but Caleb kept his distance. Then came February. Russell had to leave town on business, and Caleb's grandparents were away visiting family in Portugal. There was no one else around to watch him. Evelyn was thrilled at the chance to have Caleb stay with her. Caleb? Not so much. To make things worse, it just so happened that Evelyn's wedding anniversary with her husband Craig fell on that same weekend. Caleb tried to keep his head down. He stayed in his room most of the time, drowning himself in schoolwork or disappearing with friends, anything to avoid the fake cheerfulness of family dinners or the sound of Evelyn giggling in the kitchen with Craig and their daughters like they were some fairy tale couple. The morning before the anniversary, Evelyn came into Caleb's room. She sat on the edge of the bed and gently wrapped her arms around him, the way she used to when he was little, before everything fell apart. But Caleb couldn't move. He clenched his eyes shut and pretended to be asleep. He felt cold and stiff, his whole body frozen under her touch. When she finally left the room, he broke down. Silent tears spilled into his pillow, and he was filled with anger, sadness, and a deep, aching loneliness. Later that day, he made a decision. Evelyn had a degree in English literature. Books were her passion. So Caleb picked out a gift for her and Craig's anniversary, a hardcover copy of Anna Karenina. He'd never read it, but he'd watched the movie with his girlfriend, and he hated it. The story of a woman who abandons her husband and son for another man, and she pays the price. He knew what message he was sending. At the party on Sunday, Caleb sat quietly as the house filled with laughter, music, and gifts. When it was his turn, he handed the wrapped book to his mother. Evelyn opened it and blinked at the title. She didn't say much, just a soft, "Thank you." But Caleb could feel the tension behind her smile. The party ended not long after. That night, from the guest room, Caleb heard her crying. Her sobs cut through the walls like knives. He pressed his ear against the door and listened to her talk about the book, about him. Craig tried to comfort her, but her pain spilled out in broken sentences. The next morning, Evelyn left the house before Caleb even woke up. At breakfast, Craig looked at him with pure disgust and called him cruel, along with a few other things Caleb won't repeat. It's been a few days. Evelyn hasn't really spoken to him. Caleb feels sick about it, knowing he made his mom cry, But at the same time, he feels like she should already know how much it hurts to be there, how hard it is to be a guest in a house where he's supposed to feel like a son. So he asked Reddit the question he couldn't stop thinking about. Am I really the bad guy for giving her that book? He explained everything in a quiet edit later. That he never wished harm on her, never wanted her to suffer. He didn't want his parents back together. His dad was engaged now and happy. But Caleb stopped visiting his mom because her husband made him feel like a stranger in his own family. And his mom never fought to make him feel otherwise. The book was a message, not a threat, but a desperate attempt to say, this still hurts. And maybe, deep down, a cry for her to finally listen. Rebuilding something that's been broken isn't easy, especially when it's your relationship with the person who gave birth to you. Caleb's story sits in that gray space between grief and love, between anger and longing. And now, after everything that's happened, he's left wondering what kind of connection, if any, is still possible with his mother, Evelyn. No one's saying he has to forgive her. No one's suggesting he should suddenly forget the way she broke their family apart or how she chose someone else. But the question keeps coming up. Does he want a relationship with her again? Any kind of relationship? Because despite what she did, it does seem like Evelyn misses that bond. She shattered it, yes, but now she's left trying to gather the pieces and hold them out to him with trembling hands. Maybe she doesn't know how to fix it. Maybe she's just fumbling in the dark like he is. But it can't be on her terms, not anymore. Evelyn doesn't get to decide how this plays out. She can't crawl into his bed and pretend the past didn't happen. That moment 6 years ago, the day she walked out, it drew a line. And everything that follows now has to happen on Caleb's side of that line. Caleb's post hit a nerve online. People flooded in with opinions, some supportive, some harsh. Most agreed he wasn't the villain here. One commenter, DZ, said, "You're definitely not in the wrong. For one, Anna Karenina is a literary classic, and if the shoe fits, well, she's going to feel it." Another reply from Jemmy913 hit even harder. "Your mom had to face the consequences of her betrayal. Your gift forced her to confront the reality that her affair didn't just break her marriage, it wounded her son. Craig, her husband, needs to back off. If he ever says anything like that to you again, maybe tell him, 'Would you be okay if my mom did to you what she did to my dad? Would you let your wife walk out on you and your kids like she did to us?'" Caleb hadn't thought of it that way, but now it made sense. It wasn't just Evelyn's affair that caused the pain, it was also the way Craig looked at him like he didn't belong. The way Craig inserted himself into things he didn't understand. That resentment ran deep, and Craig's attitude was a major reason Caleb never wanted to visit. Then came another reply that left a mark. This one from someone with the username DrCatPhD. "Look, I understand why you're upset, but you do realize that Anna, in the book, loses everything. Her husband refuses to let her see her child, and she slowly loses her mind thinking her lover no longer wants her. In the end, she takes her own life. That's an incredibly heavy message to send to your mother. Did you really mean to imply you hope her life falls apart like that?" Caleb hadn't thought about it that deeply. He hadn't read the book. He just remembered how it made him feel, watching a child get left behind. That sadness stuck with him. That was the message. Not revenge, not cruelty, just pain. Dr. Cat PhD continued. "I'm not blaming you, but it's clear you've been holding on to this pain for 6 years, and if you don't find a way to work through it, it's going to keep hurting you. Not just you, people around you too. I bet there's still love in your heart for your mom. That's why it hurts so much. She made a terrible mistake, but maybe she wants to fix things. She just doesn't know how. If you could talk to her, just once, maybe that could be the start of something." And finally, another comment came in. Quiet, but powerful. It mentioned something Caleb had never said publicly, something tucked away in a small edit at the bottom of his post. When people asked why he wasn't in therapy, Caleb had explained. His father, Russell, had his reasons tied to a past Caleb barely understood, a bad experience with a therapist when Russell was a child, something traumatic. So when it came to therapy for Caleb, Russell was protective, overprotective. And that meant Caleb had been carrying all this for years. No tools to unpack it, no space to understand it, just layers of sadness buried under the surface, slowly turning to bitterness. That's what the commenters saw. A teenager, now almost a man, still stuck at the moment his world fell apart. And the book, the gift, wasn't a threat. It was a message from a child who had waited too long to be heard. He didn't want Evelyn to suffer. He just wanted her to understand. Clover the Wonder Kitty's comment was one of many that struck Caleb deep. She wrote, "You're not the bad guy. My dad cheated on my mom when I was in high school. He married the woman he had the affair with. It changed everything. He tried to force us all into the picture-perfect family, sold our home, and moved in with her and her kids. I was supposed to act like nothing ever happened, like my whole childhood hadn't just collapsed." She continued, "Your mom doesn't get to force herself back into your life on her terms. She doesn't get to hug you when it makes her feel better, especially if it makes you feel worse. You're not a teddy bear. She has to face what she did and stop trying to squeeze you into the fantasy version of her life where the damage never happened." It was a strange relief to Caleb, 17 now, sitting in his girlfriend's room in Asheville, North Carolina, to read words that mirrored his own feelings so clearly. There were so many responses like that, people who'd been through the same thing, who understood how it feels when a parent tries to rewrite history with affection instead of accountability. Then there was a reply from someone called Honey Badger Marmalade. It started blunt. "I'll probably get downvoted for this, but everyone sucks here. Divorce is brutal, and when cheating is involved, it's 10 times worse. Yeah, your mom destroyed her marriage and hurt you in the process, but it's also been 6 years, and it sounds like she's trying now even if she's doing it all wrong. The truth is, I'm not sure there's anything she can do to repair the relationship if you've already decided it's beyond saving." It stung, but there was truth in it. Caleb responded with honesty, quoting that comment and writing, "I don't want to punish her. I want to have a relationship with her. I just don't want it to come with strings. I don't want it to mean I have to accept her husband or pretend to be a big brother to her daughters. That's not fair. That's not healing." And then, quietly, things started to shift. The day after his post went viral, Caleb let his girlfriend read it. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes and said, "You can stay here, dummy." That's when he finally told his dad. Russell was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed. Caleb could stay with his girlfriend's family until his dad returned from the trip. His girlfriend's mom even offered to email Evelyn to explain the situation gently. Caleb sent one too. Evelyn responded with a short message asking if she could drive him over herself. Caleb still wanted to talk to her, just once, alone. His school counselor had helped him write a letter, something structured and calm, something to help him get through the emotions without falling apart. He kept the paper folded in his pocket as Evelyn drove, but he couldn't bring himself to pull it out. Instead, they sat in silence until she pulled into an empty lot on the edge of town and turned off the engine. For a moment, Caleb thought she might cry,
But instead, she began to talk. Her voice was shaky at first, then steadier. She talked about the book. She said she understood why he gave it to her, and that it made her realize she'd been pretending too much, pretending things were okay when they weren't. She told him she still saw him as her baby, even though he clearly wasn't anymore. She admitted she wasn't happy, not fully, and hadn't been for a long time. She said she missed him every day. Then she said the thing that finally broke Caleb. "If you hate me for what I did, that's okay. I hurt you. I won't ask to be your mother again. But if you ever change your mind, I'll be here." Caleb didn't say anything. He just cried. Hard. His whole body shook. He didn't remember moving to the back seat, but somehow he ended up there, folded into her arms like he was 11 again. He tried to tell her he loved her, but the words blurred into sobs. She stroked his hair and whispered that she knew. He told her everything, how he hated being in her house, how Craig made him feel like a stranger, how the fake happiness made it worse. He told her about the morning she tried to cuddle him, how it made him furious, and how now he felt guilty because it would never happen again. Evelyn quietly confessed that she knew he was awake, that she saw the tension in his shoulders, that she should have stopped. She cried too. She promised him it was okay to be mad, promised she would never let Craig come between them again. She said she'd take him to therapy with her, no matter what Russell thought. She wanted to spend more time, just the two of them. And she meant it. She dropped him off at his girlfriend's house, hugged him one more time, and left. Caleb stayed there until Russell got back. His dad, seeing the shift in him, finally agreed to family therapy with Evelyn. He said he'd make sure it was done the right way. And so far, Evelyn has kept her word. She's been reaching out, not with hugs or guilt or forced dinners, but with gentle texts and quiet check-ins. And slowly, Caleb is starting to feel something he hasn't felt in years.
Hope. Caleb hadn't expected his post to blow up the way it did. He hadn't planned for thousands of strangers to dissect his pain, or for his words to reach so many people who had walked similar paths. But they did. And when he shared his update, he hoped it might bring some closure, both for the people who had worried about him and for himself. Things weren't perfect. They probably never would be. But they were better, or at least starting to feel like they could be. Talking to his mom, Evelyn, that day in the parked car had shaken something loose inside him. It didn't erase the years of silence or fix the fracture between them, but it gave him a place to begin. For the first time since he was 11, Caleb felt like he had permission to grieve, out loud, with her. And maybe in time that grief could turn into something softer. Therapy still hadn't started yet, but Russell had given his reluctant blessing. He'd make sure it was done the right way, that Caleb wouldn't be forced into anything. That was enough for now. And even if his father would never sit in those therapy sessions himself, he understood why. He knew about the past now, at least the pieces his father had quietly shared. Some wounds didn't look visible, but ran far deeper. Still, Caleb needed help. He was 17, and he'd been carrying a weight no kid should have to carry for that long. At least now, someone was finally helping him hold it. What made this all the more painful, of course, was how young he was when it all started. Just a boy, 10 years old, watching his family unravel, confused and heartbroken, wondering why the woman who used to kiss his forehead at night
suddenly had no place for him in her new world. That kind of heartbreak didn't just fade, it settled into bones. It shaped the way he moved through the world. He didn't want to keep punishing her. He didn't want to stay angry forever. But healing had to happen on his terms now. And as this chapter in Caleb's story quieted, another story from someone else began to echo in the background. A different kind of betrayal, but one that also centered around trust being broken at a deeply vulnerable time. This story comes from a woman who waited 5 long years to become a mother. She finally got pregnant and gave birth to a son. It should have been a moment of joy, but instead, it turned into a battle over identity, a name. The trouble started with pressure from her in-laws. They wanted her son named after her deceased brother-in-law. It wasn't just a suggestion, it was an obsession. Her husband took their side, pushing the idea again and again. She resisted. She didn't want her child to live in someone else's shadow, especially not someone he would never even meet. Eventually, after much arguing, her husband and she agreed on a name they both loved. It was meaningful, fresh, theirs. But then, during the birth, complications arose. She had to stay in the hospital longer than expected. During that time, her husband handled the paperwork, and when the birth certificate arrived, her heart sank. Her husband had named their son after his late brother, not the name they agreed on, not their name. She broke down. She shut herself off completely, emotionally, physically. She told him she wouldn't speak to him again until he made it right. At first, he brushed it off, told her good riddance. But the days wore on, and her silence became unbearable for him. He began pleading, then begging. He said he had no choice, that if he didn't use the family name, they would shun him, that their son wouldn't be included, that he'd miss out on everything, the college fund, the car, the inheritance, the love, all because of a name. He even handed her a sheet of paper listing the benefits of keeping it, told her this name would guarantee our son a golden life, a pedestal of privilege. But to her, it was never just a name. It was an identity, a legacy, a cage. Her son wasn't a replacement. He wasn't a stand-in for someone who was lost. He deserved to be his own person, not a vessel to carry her husband's guilt or his parents' grief. Her husband offered compromises, nicknames, a second middle name, but she refused. This was too big, too raw. He cried, called her selfish, accused her of ruining their son's future, but she stood her ground, quiet, firm. This, for her, was the line she wouldn't cross. Maybe her husband didn't understand it yet. Maybe he never would. But this wasn't about being stubborn. It was about protecting her son from a life where his worth was measured by someone else's memory. And sometimes, that's the most painful thing of all, having to draw boundaries with the people you thought would protect you, only to realize you're the one who has to protect your child. Because some hills are worth dying on. And this, like Caleb's quiet heartbreak, was one of them. There's something quietly devastating about realizing that the people we build our lives with don't always protect us, and sometimes they don't even see the harm they cause. The woman in this story is still reeling from the betrayal of her husband, the man who promised to stand by her, who agreed on a name for their long-awaited son, only to break that promise the moment she was too weak to stop him. What made it worse was that when she found out, he didn't apologize. He tried to justify it. Commenters tried to offer insight, comfort, and hard truths. Some were confused about the legal side of things, like she even could change the birth certificate now without his consent. It seemed to vary depending on where she lived, but the legality wasn't really the core issue. It was the breach of trust, the broken line between shared parenthood and selfish control. One commenter, Floppy Eardog, offered a blunt truth. "Your husband needs therapy. He's been conditionally loved by his family his whole life, and he still hasn't accepted that. He keeps chasing their approval, no matter the cost. Now he's willing to let your son become a puppet to earn it. He needs to put you and your child first. You both need counseling." The woman, whose name wasn't shared, but whose pain was loud and clear, replied with heartbreaking clarity. "I don't think he'll ever realize how toxic this is. He knows his parents never loved him the way they loved his brother. Even now, after his brother's gone, they still act like he was the only one that mattered. And somehow, my husband is still desperate for their praise. We're not in a great place financially either, so I think that plays into this too. He sees their approval as a lifeline." Another user, Cats Are Better, made a point that hadn't crossed her mind. What happens if you have more kids? How will they feel growing up in the shadow of the golden child, the one who got all the gifts, all the praise, all the love, because of a name? That hit hard. She replied, "I hadn't even thought that far. I was already afraid of how he'd be treated compared to his cousins, but if we had more children, how do I explain to them why their brother is always first, always favored? That isn't a family. That's a wound waiting to happen."
The conversation took a darker turn, with one particularly sharp reply from a user named Unknown. "Your son isn't just going to carry that name. He's going to carry a burden. He'll be a replacement child. The in-laws will try to dress him like their lost son, push him into the same hobbies, same interests. They'll try to mold him into someone he's not. Depending on how old their son was when he passed, they'll project everything onto yours, even the career path. It won't stop with the name." The mother's reply was short, but full of quiet dread. "That's exactly what I'm afraid of. This isn't just about honoring someone. This is about possession, about rewriting our son into someone else's image. I just want him to be his own person. I want him to have a normal life. That's all." Another user, the Truest Repairman, added something helpful. "Birth certificates take time to process. It's likely you and your husband were both calling him by the name you agreed on for those first days. You didn't know he had done this until the certificate arrived. My cousin was able to change her baby's name, so it's not impossible. But more importantly, your husband's obsession with his parents' approval is heartbreaking. He didn't once mention love for his brother, just the benefits of the name." And that's what stuck with the mother. Her husband never said he missed his brother, never cried over the loss. He only talked about college funds, birthday parties, inheritance, strings attached to a name, power wrapped in grief. She replied, "That's true. It did take time for the certificate to show up. I didn't suspect anything until it came in the mail. We had both been calling him by the name we chose, or so I thought. Now that I look back, my husband only used vague nicknames.
Nothing tied to either name. I guess I just didn't see it. The thread ended with an open question. Would this be your hill to die on? Would you leave your partner over a name? Many answered yes. Some hesitated. A few tried to argue for compromise. But most saw what she saw. This wasn't just about a name. It was about being erased, about being ignored, about watching your child become someone else's grief project. This was a boundary, one that once crossed changes everything. And for her, this hill wasn't just worth dying on. It was the only way to protect the life she just brought into the world. Thank you for spending these moments with me today. Your time, your presence, and your empathy make a difference more than you know. So, wherever you are, walking through the quiet, sitting in a dark room, or just trying to fall asleep, I hope Caleb's story stays with you. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And, as always, take care of your heart. Until next time. Caleb's story reminds us how deeply a parent's betrayal can wound a child. When trust is broken at such a young age, those cracks don't disappear with time. They wait, and sometimes years later, all it takes is a book, a memory, or a quiet moment to split those old wounds open again. If you're someone who's been hurt by a parent, know that your pain is valid, even if others don't see it. Healing doesn't mean forgetting or pretending things never happened. It means choosing what's best for your heart now. And it's okay to set boundaries, even with people who raised you. It's okay to say, "This is how I protect myself." If you're a parent and you know you've made mistakes, don't expect immediate forgiveness. Show up, listen, let your child speak their truth, even if it hurts. Rebuilding trust is slow, but possible if done with patience and sincerity. And to anyone watching who feels stuck in the middle of love and grief, therapy can help, journaling can help. Just talking to someone who hears you without judgment can be the first step forward. No one heals alone, and you don't have to.